All right, so there's several factors with today's weakness beyond seasonality, two of them which could actually be heading to the Supreme Court. President Trump's tariffs and the ability of the executive branch to terminate a Fed governor for just cause. Now, there's a fascinating subplot to all of this, and it's in the role of the Federal Reserve in the lives of everyday Americans. You know, Jay Powell says that as a disclaimer, but he doesn't really, I don't think, get it, right? Gets it, really. When the Fed slammed rates higher, remember they were so late that they had to jam rates higher, it sent the payout from money markets to levels that hadn't been seen in decades. Consequently, I mean, first of all, many people thought this whole thing was antiquated, right? No one was talking about money markets. Now they have $7 trillion. And this has allowed wealthy investors and big businesses to simply park money. And they get billions of dollars in interest payments. Everyone else, well, this is what they've gotten. They've gotten higher credit card rates. Take a look at that. Higher auto loan rates, and of course, shut out from the housing market. So it's no wonder when asked about sentiment when it comes to the economy, households with more than $100,000, they seem to be thrilled. They should be. Everyone else, though, it feels like the proverbial tree falling in the woods. No one at the Fed seems to be listening. And that brings us to politics. A report last December on partisan trust with the Federal Reserve revealed a major shift. Once independents and voters had the lowest trust when it came to the Fed, now it's Republican voters. And by the way, this is before the current election cycle, right? And I think what it is a reflection of a major shift of the Democratic Party becoming the party of the wealthy, whereas Republicans have become the party of blue-collar workers. The Fed is losing the public relations war. I mean, that $3 billion renovation boondoggle, of course, the inflation transitory call might live for infamy. And now using things like aggregated data that stops them from seeing really the agony that poor middle-class folks are dealing with. The question now is what happens in the legal arena. I'm going to bring in former Deputy Assistant Attorney General and also UC Berkeley Law Professor John Yoo. And John, let's begin with your assessment of this Lisa Cook case.
Charles, great to be with you. What's going on here is that President Trump initially is trying to remove Governor Cook just based on the grounds Congress set out in the statute. As you mentioned in your lead-in, Charles, the statute says that the president can remove governors of the Federal Reserve for cause. The Supreme Court has never told us what that phrase for cause means. And so President Trump can say, look, I think that she tried to defraud her mortgage on her mortgage application since she's someone who's in charge of overseeing and regulating the financial industry and the banks itself. This is not someone we want to have in a position of public authority. It could undermine confidence in the uncorruptibility of members of the Fed. But suppose that she wins. She sued President Trump. Suppose she wins on this issue, says that doesn't constitute for cause. Then President Trump has to come out, as you suggested, Charles, with a constitutional argument, which the Supreme Court has been very sympathetic to when it comes to other agencies, which is any agency that executes federal law has to be accountable to the president because we, the voters, elect the president. That president has to be able to hire and fire people because he has to ensure that they execute federal law properly. The Constitution makes the president the only officer in our government who is constitutionally responsible to take care that the laws are faithfully executed. And so therefore, the Supreme Court said the president can remove, say, the head of the CFPB, can remove the head of the NLRB. Why should the Federal Reserve be any different than those other agencies?
Now, having said that, they made it clear, I think, earlier this year that for some reason the Federal Reserve chair, though, is off limits.
I don't think he is. Actually, the statute that creates the Federal Reserve actually doesn't place any conditions on removing the chair. All these protections apply to the members of the board. So President Trump, I believe, could easily remove Jay Powell and say, you're going back down to be a member of the board of governors, just like the others, and I can pick someone else to be the chair. If he were to try to remove Powell completely from the Federal Reserve, then it would be the same legal issues that apply to Ms. Cook.
I want to shift gears to the president's tariff policies. Of course, Friday, a big shocker, not necessarily, but maybe the timing of it. Some people thought that was going to happen. The court's ruling that blocked most of Trump's tariffs as a quote unquote an emergency. Of course, President Trump says he plans to file an appeal as soon as tomorrow. Your thoughts there?
That also, I think, like the last question, is going to go to the Supreme Court for a final resolution. I think the Court of Appeals decision below is very strange, and that President Trump has pretty good grounds. He may well win. The reason why, Charles, you just mentioned it, the question should be, can a trade deficit be a national emergency? A trade deficit we've had for 50 years. A trade deficit which is about the same as a percentage of GDP as it was in the early 2000s. Is that a national emergency? This appeals court didn't touch that question at all. Instead, it said, under the statute, the International Economic Emergencies Act, that Congress gave the power to the president to regulate any foreign transactions if there's a national emergency. Does that include the power to tariff?
Right.
It seems to me that language is so broad, it includes the ability to tariff, so that the Court of Appeals below got it wrong on both important questions.
John, I got less than a minute to go, but, we're talking about these courts. A big topic in the last few years, particularly when it comes to President Trump, are activist jurists, right? These activist courts. I thought the Supreme Court came down on them. I thought John Roberts said something to the effect of cut it out, but I don't know that they're cutting it out.
Good point, Charles. The Supreme Court has said exactly as you said to these lower trial court judges, of which there are almost 1,000, stop trying to run the way the executive branch executes federal law. You can enjoin somebody who's in your courtroom, but you can't issue these nationwide injunctions. Yet we still see judges just today and yesterday trying to do that. So the Supreme Court, I think, is going to have to get these cases back and repeat itself and say, we really mean it this time. Stop trying to defy our orders.
John, thanks so much. You're one of the legal eagles out there I trust the most. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.